Okay, so there's lots of parts, right, for like navigating with a map and compass. We're going to cover triangulation and taking a bearing on Saturday when we're going to do those things in the field, because those are very practical oriented exercises. What we're going to talk about tonight is how to plan. And so the Santo compass that this one is, they have like 5 different models. It took me a couple of goes to get the one with millimeters. So this is the kind that we recommend. There are other types of compasses, right? So this is a military compass. It has the same concept, right? You can see the orienteering lines through the map and the orienteering lines. Because this is a military compass, though, the outer bezel is not in degrees; it's in mils. So if you're on your own, it makes absolutely no difference, right? Whether you're heading off at and I should probably do the math right here, whether you're doing like 180 degree bearing or whether you're doing a 3200 mils bearing, it's just that bit at the bottom of the compass that's opposite north, right? It's very straightforward. It just becomes an issue if you're trying to pass a bearing to somebody else, because now your compass is in a different system and converting is not easy math on the fly, because there's like 17.78 mils in a degree. Although this one does actually have a thing on the back that helps you do the calculation. That's where the mirror drops down, so you can still do sightings on that one. And then the other compass that people tend to have is this kind. This is also listed as a military compass, although it's got mils on the outside and degrees on the inside. This is a lensatic compass, so you look through the lens onto the dial. So I like using this because I don't need my glasses, right? Because I need reading glasses and I don't need it with the lens here. The disadvantage of this one, though, is you cannot see through the compass onto the map, and so right, because this dial is opaque, so it's a little bit harder to use as a map tool. Okay, so those are the different type of compasses. Now let's dive into the slides here. So when you are navigating with a map, right, so in this case you have your start position, right, marked over there with the red S, and we're going to try to go to this house here, 1402 on Nutmeg Lane. I have no idea who lives there. This was just a convenient street pattern that I wanted to use. It's in Davis, so I'm vaguely familiar with it. So if you're starting off in Slide Hill Park there, right, you'd be tempted to say, well, you get onto the road, turn left, right, go down to Manzanita, turn left again, and then when you get to Nutmeg, turn left, and then go halfway down the street and you're there, right? And that works, right, as long as people don't get confused while they are doing that, right? And this is a very short trip. One of the things that GPS does for you is it always tells you where you are, right? But you don't have that with a map and a compass, right? Unless you want to triangulate your position every 5 minutes, and that's a very expensive operation. So a better solution is to go with something called collecting features, right? So you get onto Temple, you turn left, and then you go down the road, and you're expecting to see these things, right? So you're expecting to see Myrtle Place, and then you're expecting to see Bossum Place, then Cook, then Tea, then Poplar. And so as you go past those things, you can check them off your list, right? And that way right, that you're not lost. You're not going to get, between Tea and Poplar and then go, oh, did I pass Manzanita? Maybe I need to turn back and go the other way, right? Like the guy that we were talking about earlier. This helps pin you to the map without having to count your steps, right, to know exactly where you are. The other thing that you want, right, is called a catching feature. And catching features are the opposite of collecting, right? So you go down the street collecting the things that you know that you want, but if you get to Clemson Drive, you've gone too far, right? And so you want that backstop so that when you're supposed to turn left, you actually do that. And if you go further than you intended, you reach something that you are expecting to reach if you went the wrong way, right? And then you just chain all of those things together, right? So you're going to go down here. The next thing that you want to check off on is, oh, Manzanita takes a really sharp right turn, right? So you know when you've reached that point. And then you collect the you collect Buckeye Lane, you turn left on Nutmeg. If you get to Banyan Place, you've gone too far, right? And then the same thing applies to the house numbers, right? When you're looking for 1402, so you run through all the 14s. Once the numbers start becoming 13, you know you've gone too far. So we're going to use this. So this is, I decided to use Katie's tracks for that. So this is Robert and Katie's search, right? So they were dropped off by helicopter right there in the flag that's flagged as ICP, right? And they needed to get from there to their search zone, which was over here, right? So you can tell that you cannot go from the ICP to the search zone in a straight line. That would be an absolute nightmare hike, right? So you need a plan, right? You need a travel plan on how you're going to do that. And so this, okay, so first of all, they set off from ICP, and if I can find number 2 here, there we go. So they set off for ICP, right? And the first thing that they are looking for is they are going to cross that trail, right? When they cross the trail, right, they know what direction they're heading in, right? So they can use a compass bearing to do that. I'm sure you used CalTopo, but you could have done this with a map and compass. So you're going to keep going along that bearing. You're going to cross one trail, and then you're going to get to the PCT trail. Okay, so then the next section is between the 2 trails, right? And then the section after that, you get to the junction, right, where the trail on the left goes down to Lake Aloha, right? And you want to stay to the right. So staying to the right would be the right thing to do. If you go down too far, though, you'll notice that there's this very easy to recognize trail intersection, right? You've got 2 trails that come in, and then there's a very short straight bit, and then you've got 2 trails that go out, right? So you know that if you've reached this part, right, you have gone too far. And you need to go back to this trail and carry on straight, right? Then the next thing you expect is a trail coming in from Marjorie Lake, right? And so you see that, you check that off your list, and then you keep going until you get to the bank of Lake Aloha, where you see another trail come in, right? So you check that off your list. Then you continue around the lake, and there's some things that you are expecting to see, right? There's a small lake here, right, that you would expect to see on your left-hand side as you do that. And this is important because at this point, you are about to deviate from the trail, right? So they could have continued along the trail to this junction and then come all the way back round, right? But they did have work to do. So what they decided to do was head north here towards Lake LeConte, which they were going to pass on the left-hand side, and then they were going to keep going past that up towards Heather Lake, which has a sort of unique shape, and they want to work their way around here, right? So they're cutting off all of that trail on the left-hand side. Then, at some point, right, they're going to keep going, and they're going to merge back onto this trail. Now, at that point, right, they need to either go left or right, right? So they're supposed to go right. If they go left, right, then they should look and say, hey, if we look like we're going around Heather Lake, then we're doing that wrong, right? We've gone the wrong way on the trail, so we need to go back and do the, take the right-hand fork. And then this is effectively some arbitrary point on the trail, right? And the reason that this point is important is because this is where they leave the trail and they go and they do their search zone, right? So you can see that the trail here has a pretty distinctive shape, right? It's a U shape. You're heading off in like the easterly direction, and then it sort of swings around back to the north. But they leave the search zone, right, at this point here, and then they move on to the adjacent search zone, which is on the other side of the stream, and then they search that zone. So now they're here, right? And so there's a choice to be made, right? I mean, option one, the simple navigation option, is to just turn around and go back the way you came, right? But that's kind of, all the way back over here, right? And ICP is over there. So somebody has the great idea that, hey, if we keep going, along this bearing here, we are going to eventually run into this trail, right? And so you can see that that's what they did, right? They went down here, and their feature was, right, Grass Lake is going to be on the left, right? And as they approach that area, there's this chance that they're going to run onto this trail, but they don't want to take that trail, right? So this is a catching feature that says, this is the trail, but not the one you want, because they'd have to go through this pass up here and then back around this way, right? Whereas it is quicker to just cut that corner and go, and keep going, and then you run into the trail again. Okay, then I'm so glad I wasn't on this part of the hike with you. This is a nightmare, this part. So you hike all the way up this. It's really steep, right? Then but you're going the right way, because at this point in the trail, you're expecting it to take a sharp left, right? And it takes a 90-degree turn to the left. It keeps going up, up and up and up and up, right, until you get to Lake Lucille. When you're using when you're trying to plan with a map and a compass, right, you need to plan all of those different sections out, because you do not want to be counting your steps from the ICP all the way around some 11-mile hike over, like, on the trail, off the trail, right? There's no way you are going to keep that straight in your head, right? And you're going to get lost. CalTopo actually has this feature built in. So if you actually plan a route on CalTopo and you click on it, one of the options that you get is this travel time thing. And what that does is it actually makes, so the reason that I put all of those points on the map is because I needed some names here. So if the route goes close to a marker, it will list it on the trail. It will list it on this sheet, and it shows you, right, you're going to go from the start to the first thing where you're going to cross the trail. It tells you what your elevation gain is. It tells you how far it is. It tells you how long it thinks it's going to take you to do that, right? Because that's the other option that you have when you're trying to work out a distance, right? Is you can either say, I think it's going to take, 15 steps to get from here to the wall, or you can say, I think it's going to take about 4 seconds to walk from here to the wall. Right? Either one of those will let you know, 30 steps or 20 seconds later that you've missed the wall somehow, right? Because it was supposed to be there. So all of these catching features can show up on your travel plan. CalTopo is pretty good because it also gives you a bearing of when you reach that point, which way you're supposed to be going, right? Because you can validate that on your compass. And so, this is basically your list of catching features, right? And you just check them off as you go past, right? So you can do it on the online map on CalTopo, and it's what you should be doing on your regular map as well. So the next thing we're going to talk about is aiming off, right? So you've got all of your your collecting features done. So you're down here at the stream, right? And you parked the car up on the road, and you have a bearing to the vehicle, and you're thinking, great, I'm just going to follow my bearing, and I'm going to get to the car, and everything is going to be fine. The problem is, right, that navigating and crossing terrain is difficult, and you're probably not going to follow the perfect red line. If you're lucky, will be as wavy as this yellow one, right? But I mean, in reality, it's going to be much worse than that. And so you are not going to end up exactly where you think you're going to end up, but you're going to end up somewhere close. You're going to run into the road, right, because that's your catching feature, and you're going to be like, great, the road. And then there's no car there, so you have to make a decision. Am I going to turn left, or am I going to turn right? And because you didn't aim off, you don't know whether you aired to the left or aired to the right. So with aiming off, I keep thinking I'm using PowerPoint here. With aiming off, you know full well that that green line, right, which is what the heading you're going to take, is not where the car is. But you do know that when you get to the road, you need to turn right. Because even if you mess it up this way, yes, you want to turn right. And if you mess it up that way, you still want to turn right. So it's better to miss on purpose and know which way you want to go, right, than it is to go, oh, this is going to be spot on, and then you're like, oh, because you end up going, oh, I'll go right, and you go right, and you walk 500 yards, you go, oh, I must have been left, and so you still haven't found the car, and now now you've got problems. So that's what aiming off is, and we are going to use aiming off, catching features, and collecting features on Saturday, not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, when we do our map and compass stuff.